let's open up the meeting and start it. It's 7 o'clock by my computer. Do we have anybody from the public waiting to be heard tonight for us? No, I take that as a no. So let's move down the agenda. Approval of the minutes. Do I have any comments, concerns, questions about last month's meeting minutes? I see none. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as written?
I move that we accept the minutes as written.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Right.
I see nothing but hands, so those meeting minutes are approved.
Cynthia, just to confirm, are you okay?
Yeah, Katie, I was about to tell you I'm taking this month, and I'll plan to unless I'm out from now on, if that works.
Okay, yep.
Thanks for covering that detail. I have another detail, more than a detail, to report. Sadly so, one of our longer serving and most distinguished members is leaving the board. Kathy Ballin is passing the baton to a new generation. Regrettably, wanted to make note of her distinguished service over the years, admirably serving several years as chairman and steering the committee ably during that process. And I personally are going to miss you, Kathy, and I wish it wasn't so, but you know, life is not always pleasant. But thank you, and thank you for your service, and with deep regret, I'm sorry to see you move on. So that
Kathy, is this your last meeting?
Yeah, I think so. Because you've had the interviews, right? For
Yeah, I was out of the country. I wasn't involved, but it's on the agenda for tomorrow night.
yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. While I wipe a tear from my eye, can we move on to the director's report?
Sure. A lot of this is kind of in my bullet points here. I will look forward to the day pretty soon when I won't have a construction update. That'd be awesome. But for now, actually, it may be one of my last construction updates. I'm happy to report that all of the construction
We just lost you, Nancy.
It said host muted me. Huh. Okay. All the construction is just about finished. So the east, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, east entry has been all sealed back up. That was interesting with the showers of sparks from the welding this past week in a small space. So we all just prayed a lot that the library would not catch on fire after all this construction was done. The last little bits are being completed. We have drywall, we have paint. They did need to do some floor repairs upstairs, but it was in a fairly contained area. So there's more of that carbon stitching repair upstairs. So we believe that the bulk of our construction will be done possibly as early as the end of this week. So we've got some stuff still to put back together. So I gave Karen Roney a list of all of our things that need to happen before we open, which isn't all that long. So at this point, we're still targeting around the middle of July to reopen fully. So pretty exciting stuff. So we're still attached. We had to wait to do a few things until the construction folks were out of the way. So our shelving for our new teen area arrives tomorrow. Staff will be putting that in. We'll be moving and shifting the whole teen area. And we've shifted the computer area upstairs and done some some other rearranging, but very happy to say that our construction is drawing to a close. You'll still see a little bit on the outside of the keyhole opening, and some landscaping and some new rails along the east side. The staff, they have the iron railing that's kind of, rusted through, etc. So you're going to see some outside things, but inside is getting ready. We do need to have a complete cleaning of our buildings. So we'll have a cleaning team made up of city custodians coming in probably next week. Because we're still, even though the staff is cleaning all the time, we have a thick layer of construction dust over everything in the building, including us probably. So we have some things to do, but we look like a matter of just a couple weeks now before we'll be open. And I will let you know the date within the next couple days. So that's very exciting. I also said budget updates. We have our department budget meeting tomorrow. So we have our requests in and prioritized. So we'll look forward to seeing how that goes and how we fit into the grand scheme of things. We were asked this year during the budget process to relate our requests back to equity and access. And most of the requests that we make every year for libraries have to do with equity and access. So that was not a difficult thing for us to do. And we look forward to hearing everyone's budget reports starting tomorrow. So that's the bulk of my time has been spent lately on construction and budget. We have a few other things going on. We are definitely hiring some folks. We have temporary employees that are very important to us, that are 20-hour employees that we had multiple positions go open during COVID. Did not, for a while we had a hiring freeze, and then we did not fill those while we were still closed to the public. So we are filling those positions as we speak. And I finished with several other folks doing custodian interviews, because we're down multiple custodians in the city right now, including Rhonda from the library. So also important for us to have our second custodian in place once we are open for hundreds of people every day coming in using the building. So I feel like, knock on wood, things are coming together. So that's most of what I had.
That's great news. You anticipate a grand opening, or are you going to do a quiet opening, or what do you think?
No, I think it's going to be kind of in between. I'm going to get the date solidified. We're going to let people know. And, we're definitely going to have some flowers and balloons. And we may even we've been offered one of the high school's jazz bands. So we think that would be fun to have that. So kind of in between a grand opening and we're not going to do it silently, because this is a cause for celebration. So we're not going to speechify either, but we're going to make it fun.
Great. And were you able to identify any one-time items?
I gave several, at Tim's request, I did give him several one-time items. It was one of those things, though, where I was told that I should have asked those in our regular budget request, which is probably true. I did not, because they are larger items that normally have not, some of our items that aren't this large have not been passed through on budget requests before, but at least I feel like they've come to folks' attention. So, we did mention the sorter or the automated materials handler, but that's something that we can also do out of Mosher Fund or one of those, or, one of the other sources. I put a pie in the sky thing there. After moving everything out of the way for the construction project, I put in a wish list item for our children's shelving. Our children's shelving is at least 28 years old. It is, from what the other staff said, probably older than that, because some of it was in the previous building. It is particle board with ugly veneer that is peeling off, and some of it was close to collapsing when we moved it back in. So it's pretty ugly and pretty unsteady. So that's a big ticket item that will need to be at least added to a capital improvement budget in the future. And then I just throw in meeting room stackable tables with wheels and stackable chairs, which we may do out of the PBF 145 fund, which is a small capital fund, but it is something that The tables are extremely unwieldy that we have in the meeting room. Our chairs are extremely uncomfortable, as was noticed by everyone who came to the city council meetings that were held in the library back when. They're difficult to stack, they're very hefty, and they're the world's most uncomfortable chairs. So those were some of the things that came pretty much off the top of my head on wish list items. We always have wish list items that we're thinking of, and if we don't, then we're not doing our job. So just
Counselor.
hand up.
Yeah. So the only feedback, Nancy, you've received from what I submitted is that those should have come through
Yep.
in a different time frame.
Pretty much.
Have you had any confirmation whether or not they're on a list to fund?
I don't think they are.
Well, I made two sets of recommendations. One of those was the three items you
Mhm.
shared. I followed up on one of the others, I guess Sunday, and have had a response in the conversation today with Harold. I waited until tonight. I just want to know where we stood to follow up on the library one-time expenses
Mhm.
or, expenditures for
Mhm.
needs. And I mean, I won't, if you tell me you don't want me to, but otherwise I would intend to follow up. We have on our agenda tomorrow night a budget ordinance to authorize $212 million of spending
Mhm.
that was not included in the budget we approved
Okay.
in October or November. 61 million of that is expenditures with new money. The rest of it's carryover.
Mhm.
And I raised the question in an email yesterday. How is it that the $61 million authorization, we couldn't find room for it's pocket change
Yeah.
relative to 61 million.
Yeah.
So I was told that it's likely we would see one of the other recommendations in the next ordinance. My intent would be to follow up to say, why is this not worthy of some portion of 61 million or whatever the next authorization is going to be, unless you
Yeah.
tell me not to?
No, I just think, it was probably my mistake first. It's one of those things where I always have wish list things in my mind. And when someone says, hey, is anything on your list? I just answered immediately.
Yeah.
And I probably should have at least gone to Karen and to Harold and said, here's what I'm considering before I just handed it off. And that was, I get excited when people say, hey, we might have some money we could find, we could fund something.
Well, it's the first time we've ever been asked as council members.
Yeah.
You have any one-time expenditures that you'd like to see?
And these are things that are more costly than something that I would tend to put in our one-time budget expenditures, because normally we can't, normally our whole list in community services of one-times that are much less costly than this is not funded.
Yeah.
So, it's not that we don't want these to be funded. If there's extra money around, I think we do. But
like I said, unless you tell me not to, my intent is to follow up after this conversation.
I think that's probably okay. And I think the horse is out of the barn at this point,
All right.
but,
I'm following up tomorrow. Okay.
and it's one of those protocol things that I try to be good about. And every once in a while, I'm just like, I have to try for what we can get for the library. That's part of
You are a loyal member of the crew. I get that.
I
But
am a loyal member of the crew, and I respect hierarchy. But on the other
I
hand,
know you do.
on
but-
the other hand, I have to advocate for the library because that's my
You
job.
absolutely do. And I'm gonna try to help.
So any
So
assistance is appreciated.
is the list closed then? You're not accepting new items that haven't already popped up. Is that true or not?
The three items that Nancy
pretty
just mentioned
costly.
were in my email with the rationale she provided and the estimated costs.
So they've already been put in front of someone.
Yeah.
Okay, and is that closes it then? You're not looking for anything beyond those items at this point?
If there were other items that in this meeting or in some subsequent conversation, I'd be happy to. I don't know that window is closed. I know there were Harold and others were in budget discussions today, some of that about how to spend revenues that were unanticipated. The city is awash in cash right now. That's just the truth. We built a pretty conservative budget for 2021, not knowing what to assume about what the economy would look like. And the concern then is that we would be in a recession. Well, we're in anything but a recession right now. And in revenues, April over April, April revenues were up 34% over revenues in April a year ago.
Yeah, I see it in my tax assessment. I understand.
Well, most of that's just sales and use tax. But
I think we
Well, there's
didn't
more
have-
good stuff coming.
Yeah.
So again, as the second question to that, you had mentioned tonight, Nancy, and you had mentioned last week, this automated catalog processing capability.
Oh,
money
the
is-
sorter? That is the first one of the requests.
That's in the budget.
The automated materials handler is the sorter, and that is the first thing on the list. And that's about, $250,000 worth.
yeah, that's already been submitted.
Okay, because I'd rather see that come out of the budget if possible, as opposed to the EMSN fund.
Yeah.
We can put the
Sure.
EMSN fund money in reserve.
I have other ideas for the EMSN fund too.
You're a creative person. I believe you.
We do. But, I think it's one of those things where when the budget process started, the way it always starts for department heads, I don't think that we all quite knew that the city was as flush with cash as Tim later told us after we had developed the budget. So, or I may have been much more greedy in what I asked for. But, it's always a balance. We want to ask for what we need, but we also know that there are, normally when we prepare the budget, obviously we're looking for what we need, but we're also looking as a whole. And we're looking at what the other community services divisions need, and we want to get what we need without overstepping and stepping on someone else's toes. So.
Oh, absolutely. But I can say, given my time on the board, this is the first time I've heard this spin on the dynamics of the budget process.
I told Karen I lost my head briefly because this never happens. I've worked for many municipalities, and I'm trying to remember if anybody ever said they had more money than they thought, and I don't think so.
I don't think it's time to be reticent about that, and I don't think it's greedy. I think it's time to be clear on what we need and push for it. So I'm going to push for it again tomorrow.
That's great. Do you have anything more for us, Nancy, on?
No, I'll touch on a couple of things in our other categories, but I think that was it.
Okay. Friends of the Library report?
Yes, I have two meetings to cover. The one the end of May, which is both of these are their normal board meetings, and the one the end of June. There were new officers that were elected at the May meeting. Sharon McCaffrey is vice president. Frank Siskowski is treasurer, and Paul Mayer is secretary. The April meeting is where they always elect their presidents, and that's where Prudence Carter was elected. The new board member, Maria Karagianis, did I get that right?
I think you did.
Yeah, she will be taking on the project of working with the Longmont LaPie. That's for the arts, and the Friends of the Longmont Museum on the messaging to the public concerning funding for the Performing Arts Center. Also the expansion with the museum and whatever results come out of our phase 2 feasibility study. So she's agreed to kind of be that voice for the Friends. So I was thankful that someone was willing to do that. Also, at the June meeting, Nancy had mentioned that they will be contracting through the Friends for all the presenters, for all the library programs. And a draft contract was sent to the Friends, and it's now in the hands of their attorney being reviewed just to make sure that all their bases are covered. They're expecting that they should be able to move forward with that final versions probably in July or August. So that will be good for them. There was a funding request for the library in May. It was for $4,115 for renewal of the library discovery passes for 2021, and it was approved, of course. They also discussed a little bit our request to the Friends Board about providing for the little free libraries. They decided they would rather discuss it in length at their board retreat, which is scheduled for August 29th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the library. There was some concern brought up that this task may be outside of their purpose and scope for the nonprofit. So they needed to kind of look at that and then discuss it at the retreat. So at this point, that's still kind of in limbo then. Membership is reported at 175 members. They're still trying to figure out ways to reach out to previous members as well as recruiting new ones. That will be a discussion topic at their retreat. At the June meeting, the bulk of the meeting was focused on a discussion of the independent contract with one of the people that works for them, Charity. If she chooses not to renew the contract, she's going to provide a transition plan. The board did select a subcommittee to get an understanding of what the volunteer duties are. There's quite a few of them and exactly what they do. They will be reporting their findings at the board retreat, and then there will probably be a discussion on developing a position on the board that's a volunteer coordinator position, whether it's tied to another officer or just a separate board position. But they do need to work on understanding what all the volunteers do. The next regular board meeting will be July 21st. And that's all I have. I will send you a copy of this, Cynthia. I'm sorry, I realized I didn't do that this morning.
Oh, that's fine. Thanks, Kathy.
Any questions?
Any questions for Kathy? So, Kathy, what was their concern about the little free libraries? I know you said it was outside of their responsibility, they thought. But it's not monetary, right? It's all charitable.
Right. I think it goes back to what their bylaws state their purpose is. And one of the statements that one of the board members made was that, the purpose of the Friends group is to raise money for the library. So they were concerned about handling these little free libraries. So and then another board member brought up, we're interested in literacy for the people that come to the library. So I don't know, it's something that they, as the board, will need to work out what exactly they're comfortable with doing. They're probably fine with giving the books, but as far as having someone manage little libraries at various places, that might be what the sticky point is.
I see.
I believe their
Councilman?
attorney is looking at the bylaws as
Yeah.
well, so.
Yeah.
So we're just on hold for that until their attorney looks through it.
Okay, Councilman?
Yeah, Kathy is or maybe Nancy is contracting through the Friends for outside resources, expertise, talent for programming through the library. Is that a workaround from having to go through the city attorney's office?
Somewhat. It's not so much the city attorney's office, it's just the city's personal services contract is very unwieldy for the types of contractors that we use. And, we have some folks, we've lost some folks that have not been willing to do this very long contract with a big disclaimer in the middle about their ability to work in this country, et cetera. And most library contracts, if you're hiring someone to make balloon animals and read some stories for a couple hours for $200, this contract is just huge.
Yeah,
So
I thought we had resolved that, but apparently not.
not really. So, we worked on it at various times, but the contract is pretty much as big as it ever was. But then we had the idea that since the Friends really finance all of our library programming, which is highly unusual, but since the Friends finance our library programs, I asked Tim in the city attorney's office, would it be something that we could do would it be, kosher to have the friends who are paying for these programs be the pass through for these contracts with the performers? And he said, yes. So at that point, we went around to, probably 20, 30 different library websites, looked at other people's contracts, looked at what their performer and presenter contracts looked like and contained, and sent over our best guess compilation of a decent looking contract that looked typical for libraries for these types of programs. And it is now with the Friends attorney. So yeah, it is a little bit of a workaround, but it's okay. I mean, if they're paying for the programs, we should be able to contract through them, and the contracts will be a lot simpler.
So Nancy, is the working around the city attorney's office or the procurement process, or both?
Yes, both.
All right.
Because we've looked at doing it. We've looked at several ways of doing it. We've looked through the personal services contract. We looked at purchasing to see if that was any easier going through that type of a contract. And there are some, to my knowledge, with the purchasing, it looked simpler at first, but there were some heavier duty insurance regulations that had to do with going through purchasing. And like I said, ours are mostly, they're almost an honorarium. They're really small amounts. Right. And so that's, for us, I think this is not something that I haven't seen other libraries do, go through their friends when their friends fund their programs, because many cities and counties have pretty unwieldy contracts. The contracts are just structured for larger or ongoing programs than what we normally have. So
thank you.
That's what we're doing.
Anything else for Kathy? Okay, Councilman, can we get your thoughts?
I've dumped all the thoughts I have tonight already. Really,
Can I ask you a couple questions?
You can indeed. I hope you will. There's nothing on the agenda that has big import. I appreciate Kathy's reference to the new president of the Friends committing to this broader conversation with LaPie and Friends of the Museum. There is a meeting scheduled, I think, now for July 11th. I have to go back and look at my calendar with Harold and others. And I think the leadership of LaPie, and to try to bring together leadership of the interests across the community, or at least across the city functions and programs and offices, to get together on messaging, so we can start to think about what a campaign might look like that gets as much public support as we can generate for the library, the museum, and for the Performing Arts Center and groups.
Is that an internal meeting on the 11th, or is that a?
It's not my meeting, but if you want to participate, I'll make that point tomorrow.
Well, I guess I'd like to know a little bit more about the meeting before I say one way or the other, if that's possible.
I'm happy to do as much intelligence gathering as I can. I think it really is about getting people around a table who don't know one another to meet one another and to agree that there is a shared interest. And we have to be real smart about how we move forward, so that we don't create winners and losers. We don't pit one interest against another, that we have a coherent, compelling, collective message about what we want to accomplish and what it's going to take to get it accomplished. So, but I'll follow up and find out exactly, or at least as much as I can, about the expectations for the meeting on the 11th, and circle back to you. I'm going to follow up with you anyway on our earlier correspondence today. And
I had the 11th as a Sunday. Is that right?
Well, maybe it's the 13th. I'd have to go back, and maybe it's the 13th.
It's the 13th at 10 a.m.
Yeah. So there you go. It's the 13th. I think I was in Tanzania when I got the initial message. So my calendar was off.
I know you get a lot of emails.
So
13th at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, because conceptually, I would like to sit in, and at least hear on behalf of the board what what people are thinking, but
Yep.
if it's not the right venue, I don't want to necessarily butt in either. So
Listen, I don't think, first of all, it's not exclusive. And I think the more leadership we have, the better informed in terms of all the interests that we share with the library and the museum and the Performing Arts Center, the better off we're going to be. So you ought not to feel reticent about it at all, Mark, and I'll follow up tomorrow.
okay, just let me check something real quick here. Just trying to determine whether I'd be double booked. Okay. So do you have anything on the cultural center district that would be newsworthy to pass on?
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned last meeting about some participation with a backstory project on the library.
Yeah. As soon as we, I think it would be ideal when we get the second phase or the second part of the feasibility study. I think that would be the right time to hit a couple of high notes. One is, especially if that were to coincide within a month or so of the, I don't know if it's a grand opening. What do we hear as an open house or whatever it's going to be, to put those together, that we're updated, we're open, and we're looking to the future. And here's what, some of the possibilities are.
Well, Nancy and I exchanged emails, and I know she has to satisfy interests within the city, but if she will, I will. So participate. So.
Well, it hasn't been an issue. A bunch of city employees have participated in backstory interviews on a host of topics, from train noise to budget to recovery to all kinds of topics in which the city has an interest. So there should not be concerns. This is storytelling. It's not political. It's not. It's really just storytelling.
I'm just a private citizen. I can get away with that. Nancy is,
Oh, I'm comfortable with it. I'm good. So.
Nancy was
I saw my old doctor on one of those backstories.
There you go. Nancy, in the Future We Deserve series, was a star when we talked about the public or common good.
I would
what's
It was
worth
fun.
preserving. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Okay. With that, then I will move on to the old business. Do you have any updates for us, Nancy, on the feasibility?
Well, it took a while to get started, to get the contract through purchasing, but we are underway with the feasibility study. Right now, we are in a data gathering phase. So we've set up a SharePoint site, and I am corresponding back and forth with Annie and getting her the piles of data that she's looking for, which includes some new data from the past year, some areas where we felt there were holes in the previous consultant's report. So there are some additional things she's asked for. For example, we compared our library in that report to some peer libraries from across the country, but she was looking for some more depth of data on Longmont and on this library. So we've given her a spreadsheet of 10 years worth of the big statistics from this library. She was also looking for some more in-depth demographic data that had been provided for. So this is just in this past week that this has been completed, so that the contract was completed, so that we have been able to start to do our data dump. So that's what we're doing right now. We will be scheduling a meeting in July. I'm not sure what the exact date will be. So we will be scheduling a stakeholder meeting in July to kind of do a kickoff once we have some of this data and go from there. Annie has a very well planned out schedule, but everything started about 2 months later than we had expected to start, because it took a while for everything to go through the red tape land. So I think we're on the way to doing some things. So as soon as I have anything more concrete, I'll let you know. And also there will be a meeting set up that I know Mark you'll be involved in. So
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the feasibility study? Okay, guidelines for use of the Moser and Empson funds. As I was trying to figure out where to go with this and look back on the minutes from last meeting, and I noticed that it was requested that there was some original documentation, if it existed, and things to help educate the board. Is there such a thing?
Mosher, I think I've seen one document on, so I can probably come up with that. So I think I got that right after the meeting and then promptly forgot about it. So I can send that around.
Okay, well, I guess as we try and put this together, we'll take whatever educational
Okay.
tools are out there.
It looks like it was typed on one of those, old libraries, old typewriters with the little round keys. So
Hey,
it's an oldie. No, I have that. I'll send that around.
sure. And with that, I think another thing that we challenged the board with was if there were other concerns, issues, thoughts that we wanted to note as part of the construction of the language that would go into revised bylaws, if you will, for the board for this activity. Has anybody come up with anything new that wasn't discussed at last month's meeting? I do not see any hands, so I would assume not. So then let me ask you, Katie, do you think you have enough information to rough draft some bylaws with respect to both of these funds so that we can start to try and frame this and get it in a form where we think we understand it and can act according to whatever those agreed upon bylaws are?
So are we doing, are these like part of our bylaws? Are they're separate bylaws? Are we
Well,
calling them bylaws?
It's an interesting question because
Because I feel like bylaws are like,
there's board bylaws, and these would be bylaws for the board, whether
Okay.
they're within the original body of our current bylaws or we set them up as a separate set of bylaws. It doesn't, whatever's easiest as far as I'm concerned. Does anybody have any thoughts?
Are
I
we,
mean, we probably should have them be separate because maybe
Agreed.
one day the funds won't exist at all. And so then it would have to be removed from the, so I think they would probably need to be treated as, unless we make it like very, very, which we can do, generalized, and there's no mention of Mosher or Empson or anything like that. And it's really just like, this is how the board treats funds that are outside the scope of the budget or, year over year numbers for the, I don't know. I mean, we can do that. And so it's kind of an umbrella language.
I do wonder though, if we ever do move to a district format or like the format of this board shifts, in that sense, would it be better to have them as separate?
That's what I was thinking, Cynthia. I think that makes sense to have it separate.
I would agree. I think it does need to be separate.
Okay, so if you take the approach of just creating some sort of global document for funds, how do you propose addressing fund-specific requirements? It has to go.
Well,
It
if we're
has
gonna
to
do
go
them
to this.
separate, then it can really be, I don't think it needs to be global, because it can really be bylaws for the oversight of the Mosher and Empson funds, right? Because that's just, its own entity then. If we were going to include them in the board's bylaws, that's when it would need to be, I would think, more generalized. But since they're separate, I think it can really just be specific to Mosher and Empson, since we kind of sort of know. We haven't gotten, we really didn't get an answer on the question, the big question, which was, are there any constraints? But we're operating right now that there really aren't any constraints. Like, ask for forgiveness, I feel like, is how we're operating right now. So I think we can do bylaws specific to these two funds, assuming that, we don't buy a boat for the library. We can pretty much use them for anything.
I think you want to do that. I think what Cynthia mentioned is something that I had a concern about too. If the library were to go to a district, it may be a moot point anyway, because you may have to draft something entirely different if we move to a governing board as opposed to an advisory board. Because how you handle funds and recommendations to the library about how to spend the funds are different. Your powers are different if you're an advisory versus a governing board, for example. So I would specific.
So you would or you would not?
I would.
Yeah, specific to these two funds, right?
Two funds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't make probably a blanket statement because that could change.
Right.
Would it also be better to refer to these more as a board policy as opposed to board
To a
bylaws?
bylaw.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's where I'm really getting, I feel like now, like, I need to be an attorney, and I am not an attorney. And like, I feel like I don't want to put together this document that in any way is like, it can be, yeah. I like the idea of
A board policy?
policy versus bylaws.
Yeah.
So.
And policies are in force until the board changes the policy. Did we ever determine that was there a question about who has the authority to authorize the funds? Was that ever answered?
That I put together, and more guidelines, I suppose.
I think we need to find that out before we make a policy about it. I'm not sure if that's a city finance question or a city attorney's question, but I think that's an important thing to find out.
I think that was what the original idea of trying to find the original documents, to find out
Well,
who.
the document is fairly simple. I will forward it. The document that I've seen back when is fairly simple, and has X amount of funds. You can spend X amount, X percentage of this fund. And at that point, it was on materials. I think I'm trying to get it mixed up between Mosher and Empson. Materials for the visually impaired. So that was when it was a small amount, and 30 years ago.
Okay, I think that was the Mosher, because the one where we buy the encyclopedia is the money's coming from Empson, right?
Yeah, this is Mosher. And I know at the time when it was unearthed, which is shortly after I got here, I remember, I think it was Jim Golden. It was someone at the city I know that they opined that was so long ago, and that the folks that had donated this were not no longer with us, that it could be used for other purposes. But I don't know.
I think the big question that came out of last month's meeting was, do we need to get approval from city council, or can we as the board say, yes, we feel this is something that we are able to spend the money on? Or do we need to bring it to the city council? Because, in the past, I think there was confusion because in the past, we were able to approve the request, but we had to basically say to the mayor, please write a check for this money. So ultimately, city council was involved in some capacity. And so that was my original document that I put together had like a whole section on the library is going to tell us what they want. We're going to look at the list. We're going to come up with with what we want. And then we're going to propose that this be done to city council. And that was met with, that was met with a little like, well, if we don't need to ask city council, let's not. Sorry, 1 second. Okay.
This is the best part about online meetings.
Sorry about that.
That's fine.
Small children in their underwear. So anyway, I think that was the big question. Do we need to ask for approval from city council, or is the board in a position to approve it and use the funds?
Would you like me to ask the city attorney? I can ask Tim Hole.
Mark, you're muted.
How's that?
Better.
There, we can hear you now.
I don't know if that's for the better or not, but the point that I was trying to follow on from Katie's discussion was, as long as the city has the money and has to write the check, they're the ultimate arbiter of what gets done. And so unless they relinquish that power and say that it's just solely on our authority that we can disperse money from either fund, I'm not sure how that gets solved.
Well, I'm willing to ask Tim Hole and our attorney and or Jim Golden if they have some theories about this, if that will be helpful, because the attorney or the head of finance seems like the ones that would probably know the answer to this. So
Yeah, because I think we can say as part of like the preamble to our policy that it's based on the passage of time and our understanding that the original restrictions associated with either fund are no longer relevant, and that based on that the board feels that it can entertain expenditures in just about any area related to the library's benefit, or something to that effect. Councilman?
Yeah, as I recall, it was Jim Golden's opinion that it was your prerogative to determine how to spend those dollars. But I think Nancy's thought about directing a question, I think you ought to send it to both Tim and to Jim. And if you're willing to copy me on it,
yep.
I'd be happy to press the case to get an answer. Things go to questions and ideas go to the city attorney's office to die, right? So rather
they
than
have a ticket system now, so it is.
oh,
it has
oh
improved.
really? That's good.
Yes, they do.
But I would sure be happy to press the issue or to say we need a timely response here. But I do think to include what you understood Jim to say,
Sure.
to both, and say, well, like we would enjoy a definitive response from either of you.
Mm-hmm.
But this is our understanding, as Mark had suggested, but we don't want to proceed without confirming that we're on solid ground from the perspective of the attorney's office as
think-
well as the financial office.
I think
So you
that's
don't
the way
get
to-
any surprises.
I'll do it. I think that's the way to go. And Jim is great about getting back, but I know we're right in the middle of budget right now, so it might,
Yeah.
might take a little bit, but I'll go ahead and draft that.
All right.
Okay, so I guess we have to defer this one then another month till we get some feedback and
I mean, if we get feedback sooner and Nancy can email it out, then I can proceed. So it can be, it can, I will keep an eye on my email. And if we see something come through, I can work on it. Otherwise, yeah, I think that's the main question. So without that, it's hard to proceed.
okay. Anybody have a problem with that? Okay, let's go forward on that basis and feel free to wordsmith however you wish to wordsmith, Katie, and we'll take a look at it. And yay or nay it based on the group's decision. Okay, we talked about the little free libraries and the comments from the Friends of the Library. Nancy, last time you mentioned there was like an all library directors meeting that you attend that might allow you to gain additional insight on Boulder's library district. Did such a thing happen, and was there any insight there?
This is the 1 month of the year that we do not meet. So I do not have further insight into that as of yet. So.
Okay, so we'll await any new findings that come out of your discussion.
I haven't seen much in the media, but I can always contact Boulder's director directly too and see if there's anything new.
Okay, very good. Either way. I'm going to move on to new business unless there's any other questions with some of the items we've just covered. So with Kathy's leaving, there's of course a gaping hole in our coverage of officer responsibility with her being the Friends of the Library liaison. Do we have any thoughts?
I was wondering, it's not something that I could do every month. Like I couldn't go to 2 meetings in the same week every month. But I'm wondering, my thought was, and maybe excluding you, Mark, because your duties are well above and beyond any other officers, is if we each took a turn, like that's, I feel like more palatable than like, I could do 2 meetings in 1 week every 3 months or every, but is that something we could entertain?
How do you think the Friends would react to that? You think they'd care or not?
Yeah.
Having been a liaison, I don't think they would care.
Well, and also if you don't even want to do that, if you're just going to wait just and see, on our new board appointee, you want to wait till that time, I go to all of them, so I can report back from the Friends meeting in the interim as well.
And the timing on the new appointee is tomorrow night?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Katie, I like that idea though. I mean,
Rotate.
I guess depending on what the new board members' desires are, because I'm also interested in learning more about the Friends of the Library, but I don't have time to take it solely on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, when I used to do it, I found it, what are you doing? I found it very helpful to go. Like I learned a lot there. Yeah, so I do think it's beneficial. You gotta stop. I do think it's beneficial for the board members to be involved. I actually think it might be beneficial to the Friends too, to kind of know more of us and get different perspectives. So I just thought I'd throw that out there because I know that Catherine said she's also starting law school in the fall, so she's definitely not going to be able to do it every month. So, I mean, there's 3 of us who are like, I can't do it every month.
Okay, so I'm okay with pushing this thing out till next meeting
Yeah.
to try and hash it out and figure out what we want to do. If you're willing to, when is the July
3rd Monday.
Yeah, the
July
Friends will meet.
21st meeting?
Yeah.
See, I guess if you're willing to just let us know if anything comes out of that, that's fine.
Mhm.
Everybody okay with that? Okay. In light of the city council moving back to in-person meetings, I thought it would be an interesting discussion to have amongst our board as to when we thought we would want to return to in-person meetings. Do we have any thoughts or concerns one way or the other on that?
We have a cleaned up boardroom, a cleaned up conference room, and places for people to meet if you're willing. So it's up to you.
I mean, I
Well, first
personally
of all,
I
are
would
there
like
any
to go back
major
to in-person.
concerns out there in our group?
What's that?
Are there any major COVID concerns about getting together? Is everybody been vaccinated?
Are you allowed
Yes,
to
yes,
ask
yes,
that?
So is there a reticence to getting back together because of the convenience of online meetings?
I do like the convenience of the online meetings, but I think the benefits gained from meeting in person outweigh those. So I am ready to go back next month or really anytime.
I personally would prefer to go back to in-person. I do so many Zooms all day, every day. Get me out of here.
I'm in line with both of you because I think you miss a lot on these online meetings. I think the interaction has less quality to it, and the give and take is a little more constrained.
And we would also like to show you the new stuff in the library. So some things look quite
Wonderful.
different. If you haven't been back for a while. There are some areas that look quite a bit better. So
Could we
Okay,
add?
well, I'll make a resolution that next meeting forward that we plan on going back to the old format of meeting at the library
mhm, mhm.
as we historically have. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Okay.
Cynthia, did you have a question?
I have a request. Can we put a tour on the agenda of an upcoming meeting for the new construction, but also for, I haven't seen like kind of the inner workings of the library as a whole.
Yep.
Sure. Did you just mute yourself, Cynthia?
I did because I was answered. That will be
Okay.
on the agenda. Thanks.
And I show you muted yourself, Tim. Do you have any concerns with going back to meeting in person?
None whatsoever. I can hardly wait to
We're-
get back to seeing real people and real faces and real conversation. So no, I have no constraints at all. I'm looking forward to it.
I would
Okay,
also
great.
like, Mark, I would also like to get back to not necessarily every meeting, but bringing some staff members that have something big going on in their department to do a report from their department at your meeting.
I'd love it.
I
I'd
would
love
like the staff to know you better and vice versa. So
Mark, I should add, by the way, I am the only other week in the next, I don't know, foreseeable number of years that I'm going to be out of town is the last week in July. And assuming that board is going to meet the last week in July, I will be out of town. Other than that, I'm here for the duration, but there's a family reunion that I'm not going to miss that's in Sun River, Oregon. So if the board's going to meet that week, then I will be absent, but not because I don't want to meet with you in person, because I'm going to meet with my siblings and nieces and nephews.
Well, that sounds like fun, and that's an interesting segue because I personally do not think I'll be in town on July 26th either. So I guess if the board is interested, we could meet a week earlier, the previous Monday, or
Mark,
we could,
that may be the day we open to the public. And
so
I
that
think-
doesn't sound like a good idea.
I think one of us meeting me is probably going to be fried on the 19th.
Well, I don't know.
Are you out that whole week, Mark?
Potentially, I could be out till Thursday.
What about August 2nd, pushing out a week?
Well, I'm out of town that week.
What about the, let's see, the 23rd? Bear with me a second. Summers are such great times to try and schedule meetings. Yeah, I got problems in August too. Does anybody want to suggest a day? Or you want to carry forward with the 26th and see if there's a quorum?
My preference would be if Mark and Tim, if you are both out, to find another date.
Especially if there's going to be a new board member.
Yeah.
It would be nice.
I am most likely out on vacation the 9th, but that's tentative. That's pushing us further in to August, but that week could work.
How about the non-Monday, the week of the 19th, other than the 19th? What do people's schedules look like?
Hang on.
I can do any day the week of the 19th.
The Tuesday, the July 20th is an open forum for the council. And regardless, I'd be tied up on Tuesday night, but other than that, I'll be available.
Well, the 21st is bad for Nancy because that's the Friends of the Library meeting.
Yeah.
How about the 22nd?
The Friends meet the third Monday of Wednesday, sorry.
Third Wednesday.
Yeah.
Why don't we all go to that meeting?
Mark, I'll need to check for myself. I can't remember off the top of my head, and I don't have my calendar in front of me. It would be a scheduled NGLA meeting, the third Thursday of a month, and I'm a liaison to that group.
Well, so the third Thursday, Tim, is actually the 15th.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. That would work perfectly then.
So the 22nd may make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, works for me.
Me too.
Okay, so I'll nominate moving the meeting to July 22nd at 7 p.m. at the library. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, we'll just have to make sure that Cynthia or not Cynthia, but Catherine and the new board member catches wind of that. Very good. At that point, does anybody from the board have a comment to make?
Yes, I do. Mark, Yes, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. I've really enjoyed working on this board. It's gotten to the point now where I do need to step back just to kind of take stock of where I'm at health-wise and so forth like that. So that's my reason for stepping back. But it's been a joy, and I will keep my eye on things that are happening with the library. And I wish you the best, Nancy, on getting it open, and looking forward to being able to go inside. And
Thank you.
so I just thank you all. It's been a pleasure working with all of you. And I'm going to miss you.
Well, thank you. It's been great tour of duty, and we're going to miss you. And, who knows what the future will hold. Maybe you'll throw your name back in the hat again and
It's possible.
come back to us. So thank you. Thanks for all your effort.
Yeah,
Thanks, Kathy.
we're gonna miss you.
Yep.
It's true for everybody on this screen right here, but Kathy, since you're gonna transition, I can't tell you from a council perspective how much we appreciate the willingness of people like you and the others of this board and the others who serve to step up and serve the way you have. It is one of the I don't know if it's unique, but one of the great assets in this city is the willingness of people like you to volunteer in ways that you volunteered. It makes a really significant difference, and it's deeply, deeply appreciated. So thank you.
Hear, hear. Okay, with that, I will move to adjourn at 8:06. And we'll see one another on July 22nd at the library.
Yay.
And hopefully
care.
we'll be all open to everybody by then. So cross your fingers. I keep waiting for one more disaster to happen. So hopefully not.
Take care.
Right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.